Imagine you're walking to work early in the morning and you spot someone lying on the ground. Your first thought? Probably just that there's someone who got too drunk and couldn't make it all the way home. But as you get closer, something feels wrong. The man's face has been smashed in, crushed so badly you can't even make out his features. And sitting right next to him is a single empty beer can, as though he just finished his last drink. At first, nobody thinks much of it. A dead man and a beer can on the streets of Mumbai, sad but not exactly unheard of. That is until another body turns up. Same brutal injuries. Another empty beer can left beside the corpse. Suddenly, the beer can doesn't look so random. Today, we're diving into one of India's biggest unsolved mysteries, a case where a beer can became a signature of a serial killer, and where the man arrested for the crimes may not have been the killer at all. This is the story of the Mumbai beer man. The best gift that I've given myself lately is just feeling good in what I wear every day. Not dressing up for a dinner or a date, just feeling like me again. I always wanted leggings that I could wear to the gym, but also grab coffee in without looking like I'm in full workout mode. But the problem is, so many things I've tried either roll down or just do nothing. Tummy control that doesn't actually control anything, and we've all been there, right? And I kept noticing Halara popping up, and then I found out about the Halara Circle, which is how I got everything I'm gonna show you today. You sign up on their website, they send you products, you actually live in them. School runs, grocery trips, leg day, and then you give honest feedback through a short survey. And they actually use what you say to improve future designs. And you can tell the pieces I got already reflect that, and I'm literally obsessed. It doesn't really show on camera because I always wear dark stuff, but my belly is a little flappy still from pregnancy, but in these I actually look slimmer and just much more confident. And there's a huge plus, deep pockets, essential when your hands are never free and you need somewhere to put your phone. Everything I got is from their Ultra Sculpt So Cinched line, the high-waisted training leggings, the scrunch ones, the boot cuts, which have become my everyday go-to. And you know what? The butt lift and tummy control are just insane. It just hugs everything in. And they have everyday pieces too, like skirts, shirts, jeans. And I'm actually wearing their jeans right now. Ridiculously soft and stretchy. So if you want to try Halara Circle, sign up on their site, you try stuff, share your thoughts, and just keep the clothes. And if you just want to shop what I'm wearing, what I showed you today, everything's linked below with my code WithMegan for 20% off full price items. So check it out, and yeah, let's get back to the story. Mumbai, or as it's sometimes called, Mayanagri, the city of dreams. People from every corner of India flock here, chasing fame, fortune, and a better life. It's the financial capital, the entertainment capital, home to Bollywood. But like any great city, Mumbai has another side to it, one that doesn't make it onto the postcards. Behind the glittering skyline, there are dark alleys, desperate people, and crimes that go unnoticed. And in late 2006, one of those crimes would spiral into something no one saw coming. One morning in October 2006, just before sunrise, a woman walking near the South Mumbai Marine Line station let out a scream that cut through the quiet of the early morning. Ahead of her, lying on the footbridge, was a man's body. Several people rushed over, expecting that the man might have been alive and in need of help, maybe the victim of a mugging or a street fight. What they found was a dead man, lying in the pool of his own blood, his face so badly damaged it was impossible to identify him. The police was called immediately. Officers combed through the scene looking for anything, a weapon, a wallet, a clue. But the area was clean. The only thing near the body was a single empty beer can. With nothing else to go on, the case was quietly shelved. The victim was later identified as Vijay Gaud, a 32-year-old taxi driver. A short story covering his death ran in the newspaper the next day, but it was buried among bigger headlines. Nobody paid much attention. Why would they? In a city of millions, one man's death can easily go unnoticed. But it shouldn't have. More than 2 months passed. Then, on the morning of December 14th, another body turned up. This time, close to Churchgate Station, just one stop away from Marine Lines, where the first body had been discovered. The victim was male, assumed to be a homeless man, and next to him sat an empty Kingfisher beer can. Then a third body appeared, found on December 25th near the income tax office at Marine Lines, and more followed. By mid-January 2007, 7 men had been found dead between Marine Lines and Churchgate, either stabbed or bludgeoned to death in narrow lanes or on footbridges. Mumbai has a serial killer on its hands, and the police needed to find a pattern fast. They spread the crime scene photos across a table and started looking for connections between the victims. They were all men who appeared to live on the streets, homeless, working odd jobs, vulnerable. All were found partially undressed from the waist down, which raised the grim possibility of sexual assault. The locations formed a loose cluster, all within the Marine Lines to Churchgate corridor, as if the killer was hunting within a specific zone. But here's something important that the media got wrong early on, and that shaped this entire case. Beer cans were actually only found near 2 of the 7 victims, not all of them. But the press ran with it anyway. The idea of a killer leaving a beer can as a calling card, a deliberate signature, was too good a story to pass up. So, the beer man. The reality was many homeless people in Mumbai use empty beer cans to store drinking water. Those cans may have had nothing to do with the killer at all. But by the time anyone thought to question it, the beer man narrative had already taken hold. So, who was the beer man? The police chased every lead they could find, but the killers seemed to be one step ahead. Whenever patrols were increased, the killings would pause, as if the murderer knew he was being watched. Meanwhile, fear spread across the city. People avoided Marine Lines and Churchgate at night. The media frenzy made things worse. Theories flew in every direction. Because the victims were found partially undressed, some newspapers speculated the killer was a homosexual predator. Others floated the idea that the murders were connected to a cult or to black magic rituals at a cemetery near Marine Lines. With no actual forensic profile to work from, the press essentially developed an idea of the killer's identity through pure speculation. And the police, under enormous public pressure, had to work within that fog. They did have one significant detail to work with. One of the victims stood apart from the rest. While the others had been bludgeoned with heavy objects, possibly stones or clubs, the last known victim, found around January 11th on a footbridge near Marine Lines, had been stabbed 20 times in the chest, abdomen, arms, and thighs. Whether this was the same killer in a different state of mind or someone else entirely remains unclear to this day. But this crime scene would give the police something the others hadn't: a trail. 11 days later, on January 22nd, a K9 unit was brought to the area. The police dog worked the scene on the bridge, then suddenly bolted down into a narrow alley below. There, tucked into a corner, officers found a gray t-shirt soaked in blood. It was the first real piece of physical evidence they'd recovered in months. They showed the shirt around the neighborhood, and locals pointed them to one man, Ravindra Cantrol, also known as Abdul Rahim. To understand Ravindra, you need to understand where he came from. He was born into a family of washermen and grew up in an illegal tenement in Dobi Talao. When that settlement was demolished, his family was dispersed. His father moved to Mahalakshmi while young Ravindra was sent to live with relatives in Pune. But his residence in Pune didn't last. He drifted back to Mumbai, bouncing between friends' homes and, more often than not, sleeping on the streets. With no real support system, Ravindra fell into gang life as a teenager, joining the Dashrat Ran gang. He collected security money, essentially extortion fees from hawkers and illegal liquor sellers. He used drugs, drank heavily, and spent time in brothels. It was in one of those brothels near Kennedy Bridge that he met a woman named Anjali. She had been brought from a village in Madhya Pradesh and sold into the sex trade. What started as a transactional relationship turned into something real. After about a year, Ravindra paid 25,000 rupees to the brothel madam to free her. They married and had a daughter named Deepa. Eventually, after a stint in prison where he met a devout Muslim, Ravindra converted to Islam and took the name Abdul Rahim. He left the gang and tried to live honestly, at one time running a street food stall in South Mumbai and operating as a police informant. Though he was homeless and alone by the time of his arrest, it seems he had tried to set his life on a better path. But none of that mattered when the pressure hit. The police had formed an 80-member task force to investigate the killings, and the bloody t-shirt was their solid lead. Ravindra's past, gang membership, poverty, long hair, and a somewhat disheveled appearance painted a convenient picture. He was known to sleep in the exact areas where the murders occurred, which could explain why the police dog had picked up a scent leading to his belongings. There was more. Near one of the victims, police had found a handwritten note. Most of it was incoherent, but one phrase stood out: "Welcome to the clan." It fueled theories about cult involvement, that maybe the murders were ritual sacrifices. But here's the problem. The note was reportedly written in good English, while Ravindra was described as having received little formal education. Could he really have written it? The police thought so. They had him write a sample, compared it to the note, and declared it a match. Now, there's an obvious question here. If Ravindra was truly uneducated, how could his handwriting match a note written in good English? It's possible that uneducated meant that while he'd had limited schooling, he wasn't completely illiterate. He may have been able to write at a basic level. But it's also possible the handwriting comparison itself was unreliable. This was never satisfactorily resolved. When Ravindra was first brought in, he denied everything. He protested his innocence in no uncertain terms. Reportedly, his words to the police were, "Sir, I have left my criminal life behind. I have no clue about the murders." He knew his past made him an easy target, a former gang member living in poverty, and he insisted he had changed. He had a family, a daughter, a faith he took seriously. But the police weren't convinced. Ravindra was detained on January 22nd and eventually taken for a narco-analysis test, a controversial procedure that involves plying a suspect with sedatives in an attempt to lower their defenses and extract confessions. Under the influence of the drugs, Ravindra reportedly confessed to killing 15 people. Some reports went even further. One account claimed he admitted to killing at least 45 people over the years, with most of the bodies thrown into the sea. The wildly different numbers give you a sense of how unreliable and contradictory these confessions were. In the version most commonly cited, he described how he would get his victims high on charas, hashish, a form of cannabis, and drunk on beer, and then beat them with blunt objects after they passed out. When asked why, his answer was unsettling. He said he derived pleasure from seeing blood, and that blunt objects made people bleed more. But his stated motive runs into a factual problem. Some forensic reports indicated that certain wounds were inflicted after the victims had already died. And dead bodies don't bleed very much. Once the heart stops pumping, blood barely flows. So the claim that he attacked people specifically to see them bleed doesn't quite align with inflicting post-mortem injuries. Whether this means the motive was fabricated, the forensic observations were incomplete, or there is a simpler explanation we're missing, nobody has been able to say. There was another major contradiction. Ravindra firmly denied ever sexually assaulting anyone, saying it was against his religion. But the media narrative was built on sexual deviance. The victims were found partially undressed, and homosexuality was a central theme of the coverage. Some reports even claimed Ravindra had said he hated homosexuals and killed them as deviants. Others suggested the opposite, that the killer was himself homosexual. These contradictory theories circulated simultaneously. Outlets were clearly just shooting in the dark. And here's the uncomfortable truth about the sexual assault angle. There are no public records of any forensic examination confirming it. No rape kits, no DNA analysis, at least none that were ever made public. The assumption was based almost entirely on the victims being found partially clothed. Whether actual assault occurred or whether that detail was an assumption that took on a life of its own remains genuinely unclear. The brain mapping test, another controversial and legally questionable technique, was also conducted. The results suggested that Ravindra recognized the victims' photos when they were shown to him, which investigators took as further proof of his involvement. But the scientific reliability of brain mapping has been widely questioned, and the Indian Supreme Court has since ruled that narco-analysis, brain mapping, and polygraph tests cannot be administered without the suspect's consent. Then there were the eyewitnesses. Rajesh Dashmukh, a vendor heading to his stall early on the morning on January 11th, told police he saw a man beating another person on the bridge. When shown a selection of suspects, he identified Ravindra. Another witness, Natha Dongre, said he had seen a body lying in a pool of blood with a man sleeping right beside it. At the time, Natha convinced himself it was nothing, maybe a puddle, maybe his imagination, and walked away. It was only after seeing the news that he came forward. But even the eyewitness testimony had problems. The Bombay High Court later noted that one eyewitness had only seen the suspect for a few seconds, and then identified his face months later, an extremely questionable basis for a murder conviction. The police charged Ravindra with 3 of the 7 murders. In January 2009, a sessions court found him guilty on 1 count, the murder of Vijay Gaud, and sentenced him to life imprisonment. He was acquitted of the other 2 charges due to insufficient evidence. The judge relied heavily on the brain mapping and narco-analysis results as corroborative evidence, along with the eyewitness accounts. The media celebrated. The beer man had been caught. Case closed. Except it wasn't. In September 2009, the Bombay High Court overturned the conviction and acquitted Ravindra of all charges. The judges ruled there simply wasn't enough solid evidence. The handwriting comparison was questionable. The narco-analysis confession, obtained while the suspect was drugged, couldn't be considered reliable. The brain mapping results were scientifically debatable. The eyewitness testimony was shaky. None of it held up to the standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Ravindra walked free after spending more than 2 years behind bars. Now, here's the detail that still keeps people talking. After Ravindra's arrest on January 22nd, the beer man-style killings appeared to stop. No more battered bodies with beer cans in the Marine Lines corridor. For many, that was the most damning evidence of all, circumstantial but powerful. However, this isn't the full picture. The last known victim was found around January 11th, meaning the killings had already stopped 11 days before Ravindra was even arrested. And there is another detail that rarely gets mentioned. In March 2007, just weeks after Ravindra's arrest, 2 more similar murders occurred in the same area. A Bangladeshi national was caught in connection with those killings. He operated in the same neighborhood and used a similar method, feeding his victims before killing them. Whether this was a copycat, a coincidence, or evidence that the real beer man was someone else entirely, it does add a layer of doubt that most retellings of this case conveniently leave out. With the conviction overturned and no new suspects identified for the original 7 murders, the case remains unsolved almost 20 years later. But theories persist. Theory 1, Ravindra did it. This is what the police still believe. A police officer involved in the investigation later told Open Magazine, "I can't say if he was involved or not, but yes, there was strong evidence against him and we presented it in court. He got a favorable ruling, and unfortunately no one appealed against that verdict." According to this theory, Ravindra was guilty, but walked free because the police relied too heavily on scientifically questionable methods instead of solid forensic work. The fact that the killing stopped roughly when he was arrested lends weight to this view. Theory 2, Ravindra was a scapegoat. Under this theory, the police, desperate to show results, latched onto a convenient suspect. The handwriting analysis was unreliable, the narco-analysis confession was coerced, and the brain mapping was pseudoscience, dressed up as evidence. Ravindra was simply a man with a criminal past who happened to live in the wrong neighborhood and sleep in the wrong places. Perhaps the real killer, seeing that someone else had taken the fall, simply stopped killing or moved on, making Ravindra look guilty by association. The court saw through the flimsy evidence, which is why the conviction was thrown out. Theory 3, there were multiple killers. The inconsistencies, the shift from bludgeoning to stabbing, the contradictory sexual assault claims, the March 2007 murders by the Bangladeshi man suggest the beer man may not have been a single person at all. Perhaps the victims were killed by different people at different times, and the police and media wove them into a single narrative because it made for a better story. Serial killers are rare. A cluster of unrelated violent deaths among homeless men in a specific area of a massive city may be tragic, but it doesn't automatically make it the work of one person. The reality is that this case was riddled with problems from the start. The forensic work was incomplete. No confirmed sexual assault examinations, no DNA evidence, limited details from autopsy results made public. The investigative methods were legally questionable and have since been restricted by the Supreme Court. The media shaped the narrative before the police could shape the investigation. Key questions regarding the beer cans, the sexual assault, the inconsistent wounds, and the note in good English were never properly answered. Ravindra Kantrol is free today. After his acquittal, he opened a small fast food stall in Dobo Talao, trying to rebuild his life. But he will carry the label of the beer man forever. As he told a reporter, every time there is a crime in the area, from a small theft to a murder, I am picked up for questioning. This, even though the court has acquitted me. For the police, I am the serial killer who got away. The real killer, whoever they are, may still be out there. It's been nearly 20 years. They're likely still alive. And maybe they've seen stories like this one and smiled, knowing that time has buried their crimes and they may never face justice. So, what do you think? Was Ravindra the real killer who slipped through the cracks? Or was he an innocent man who lost years of his life to a broken system? Or is the truth something stranger, that there was never just one beer man to begin with? Let me know in the comments below, and that is all for today. Thanks for watching.